Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to each of one, and of course, if you're new here, thank you so much for joining us. I'm very happy to have you here. I have a tantalizing what-if question that I have to share with you guys today. It is on Reddit. I was literally browsing Reddit, as one does. My favorite subreddit, Warcraft lore, again, as one does. I have my tea here. I'm literally just enjoying some Warcraft lore. And I happen upon this what-if post, and this sparks just immediately. I go, oh my god, I need to talk about this, because I think every single person will have an incredible amount of just speculation that they would love to insert here. So this is one of the videos where I really invite you to comment on the video and tell me what you think the what-if scenario would have looked like. Like, what if Sylvanas never died? I'm of course not just gonna leave it there. I will give you my thoughts, and we will sort of run through a couple of scenarios. I'm not gonna cover every single scenario that could have played out, because that could take hours, if not days, because there's a lot of things that Sylvanas' death set into motion, a lot of chain reactions that happened because of Sylvanas' death, that of course would probably not have happened if Sylvanas was still alive. So we're going to look at some of what would happen, and really only the broad strokes, and I'm going to leave it to you to go into the nitty-gritty stuff, the things that sort of more behind the scenes, if you will. Now, before we get into the rest of the video, small uncomfortable thing. If you look at your YouTube page right now, right, it's a beautiful page. There's nothing wrong with it. You have my ugly face on your screen, but there's this little white finger. It's like a little thumbs up. That sort of looks out of place. It looks sad, it looks lonely, it looks as if it shouldn't be there. How about if we tried, and this is just an experiment, I'm not saying you should, I'm just saying, what if you tried turning that blue and just check if you think it looks better or worse? You can just smack it, hit it blue, and then we'll see how that goes. You could try it with the dislike button as well, but I've heard from people, people who know people, that it's not as satisfactory if you turn the dislike button blue. But I mean, it's all you. It's your page. You can customize it whichever way you want. God knows, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Now, with me failing to make a joke, let's get into the video. So as I said, the post is from Rosibly1. It's about 14 hours ago, and he asks this insanely cool question: what if Sylvanas never died? Now, of course, we have to go to the moment that Sylvanas died. Sylvanas died defending her people at Quel'Thalas. Thanks to her death, Arthas was able to conquer the elves, so to speak, and then, of course, continue his reign of chaos throughout the World of Warcraft universe, finally ending up in Northrend, and then of course we know that Arthas was ultimately taken down. But what did Sylvanas' death do? Now, there's sort of the first crossroads that we get to. Would Quel'Thalas have fallen if Sylvanas lived? Well, it's a difficult answer, because Arthas' army was incredible at that point. By the time that he slaughtered Sylvanas, his army was already starting to overpower the elves. They were already on the back foot, because after every single battle, Arthas would just raise his own soldiers again and raise theirs, right? So every single blood elf that fell in battle would just be risen again, and the fight continues. So Arthas' army was getting increasingly more and more powerful. Now, there is also the argument that could be made, and this is something that I've been thinking about for a long time, sort of asking myself. We know that at some point, one of the reasons Sylvanas and the humans of Lordaeron was capable or able of breaking free from Arthas' hold was because of Arthas' sort of influence just spreading too thin. Arthas was trying to increase his influence so much that it started to waver. Eventually, he started to lose control of some of those under his charge. So let's run through the scenario. Sylvanas was one of the most worthy adversaries that Arthas had ever faced in his life. After countless hours and battles, Sylvanas was extremely intelligent in how she fought him, constantly thwarting every single one of his plans, luring him into ambushes, luring him into sort of choke points where his numbers wouldn't be able to overwhelm them. So Sylvanas was doing an immaculate job, really, of standing against Arthas. And if you think about every sort of city and kingdom that fell thanks to Arthas and his Scourge, Sylvanas really held out longer than almost any other, right? So Sylvanas was doing a pretty decent job. After every battle, of course, the Lich King's army would grow. So there is a question that we have to ask here. Is there a point where his army grows so much that it actually starts weakening him? He actually starts losing control over some of the people that he's raising, and this could very easily mean that a lot of his soldiers start fighting against him instead, because as we know, once they got free, they were able to think for themselves again, and they were able to say, hold up, we don't want any of this. What exactly is this? So I think from sort of a start off perspective, would Calthalas have fallen if Arthas didn't slaughter Sylvanas? Probably. It most likely still would have fallen. His numbers were immense. He was making headway, while Sylvanas was slowing him down, and of course, to the point he got so frustrated with her that when he finally did kill her, he actually told her, I will not give you the sweet release of death. Right? This is how much he hated her, how much she slowed him down. So yeah, he raised her as a banshee and forced her to fight her own people, which of course she was very adept at, and she understood how to do this, and the banshee screams made a massive difference at the end of the day. But I still believe, and you may disagree with me, you may have your own thoughts here, but I still think that even if she didn't fall, Arthas would probably have overrun Calthalas in probably a bit longer, but it still would have happened. Now, that sort of means that everything that happened from that point forward, because of Calthalas falling, would probably still have happened. But there's now an even more interesting sort of phenomena and conundrum that we enter into. Now, of course, there is another scenario that could potentially have played itself out here, and that is that what if, let's change the what if slightly, what if Sylvanas never opposed Arthas in the first place? After all, if you've played Warcraft 3, if you know anything about the story of Arthas and Sylvanas for that matter, you will know that Arthas himself said that Sylvanas is the one that brought the wrath of the Lich King and the wrath of the undead to the High Elves. All he wanted was to get to the Sunwell. He had no interest in really conquering Silvermoon. He had no interest in conquering Calthalas. All he wanted was to get to the Sunwell. But thanks to her efforts, he was now basically happy to slaughter every single High Elf out there. Now, of course, again, we could argue to hell and back about whether or not Arthas was telling the truth. I don't believe he was. If you look at everything that Arthas did, he was hellbent on creating a massive undead army, as large enough to basically conquer the whole world swiftly. So he would have looked at those elves and immediately realized there is a lot of bodies here that I could be using to my advantage. So, you know, there is, unfortunately or sadly, that part of the story that should be kept in mind in the what if scenario. But again, you know, what if is what ifs. Sylvanas obviously would not have stood by and watched Arthas do whatever the fuck he wants to the Sunwell. This was one of their most prized possessions. It was a token of the High Elven might and their kingdom. So they would not have just let him in to do whatever he wanted to the Sunwell. And of course, one could argue about what exactly his plans were prior to actually destroying the elves. And then, of course, following the destruction of the elves, his plans obviously changed considerably. But that's just a what if that I wanted to throw in here, just to see what you guys would make of that. And now, of course, we get to what I consider to be my favorite part of this what if question. What if Sylvanas never died? What would have happened to the High Elves and, of course, the Blood Elves? Now, when Sylvanas died and Cael'Thalas fell, Cael'Thas Sunstrider, the prince, led his people and ultimately, and we're sort of skipping over a lot of lore here, but obviously, ultimately, because of him, they became so dependent on magic that they turned into the Blood Elves. Their hunger for magic simply overtook them, and it was under Cael'Thas Sunstrider's tutelage, really, that this happened. The question becomes, if Sylvanas never died, right? If Arthas failed to kill her and she escaped with all of the other High Elves, would she have followed in Cael'Thas's footsteps? Sylvanas was always a master strategist. If you go through the history, you'll learn this, and this is one of the reasons Arthas killed her. This is one of the reasons, actually, he didn't kill her. He turned her because of her strategic mind, the way in which she approached life. Now, would Sylvanas have followed Cael'Thas Sunstrider? Would she have said, yes, the road that you wish to take our people down is a just road? My belief is no. Sylvanas has always been extremely strong-willed, so much so that if you go to the earliest history that we have of Sylvanas Windrunner, she actually permitted a human into the Rangers, the Elven Rangers ranks, something that was really not accepted at the time, and in fact, a lot of her betters, a lot of the higher-ups, were very much against Nathanos joining the Blood Elves and the High Rangers of the Elves, because they believed that Elven bloodlines is sort of pure, and it should remain pure, and that a human has no place among the ranks of the Elves. Of course, she also had to visit Nathanos in secret, because at that point in time, sort of relations between Elves and other races wasn't encouraged. The Elves, very much like the Night Elves, were very proud of who they were, and they were proud of keeping themselves sort of purebloods and not mixing with the other races. It's always funny to me in this regard that all of the Windrunner sisters eventually did not end up with Blood Elves. They all went their sort of separate ways. So the Windrunners clearly had very rebellious blood within them. But Sylvanas has always been someone that challenged the orthodoxy. She never just accepted what people told her. And this could have actually led to a massive fork almost instantly between the Blood Elves or the High Elves that followed Cael'Thas Sunstrider, and perhaps a subset of them following Sylvanas. Sylvanas would then later, of course, ally herself with the Horde, most likely in this scenario. Although one could argue, and this is something that I'm also sort of wondering, would the High Elves under Sylvanas? Now, we know what happened to Cael'Thas and his people. We know what happened to the Blood Elves and why they were ultimately forced to join the Horde rather than being able to join the Alliance. The Alliance wanted nothing to do with them, of course, and it was, again, Sylvanas, even in Undeath. Sylvanas she was the one who, on behalf of the Blood Elves, argued for them to join the Horde. It was her that introduced the Blood Elves to the Horde and sort of invited them into the fold, if you will. So Sylvanas would most likely have done the same with her people, or, and this is actually far more likely, the Elves under Sylvanas would probably have joined the Alliance. Because this was, and again, we're getting back into history here, when Sylvanas first broke free from the control of the Lich King, her first messengers that she sent out was to the human city Stormwind. She wanted to request membership of the Alliance. None of her scouts ever made it back. And then she realized, well, what are we to do? We can't stand alone. We are vulnerable as we are, and considering that they're killing all of our scouts and messengers, we have no option but to join the Horde. So it's very likely that the Alliance would have ended up with a Blood Elf or Elven race that under the tutelage and leadership of Sylvanas Windrunner. And to me, that's sort of the major takeaway from this entire thing. It breaks my brain thinking about the potential that could have been if Sylvanas never met her end. Now, there's many more that we can go into. We can talk about Gilneas and how Sylvanas turning actually impacted and influenced Gilneas. We can talk about exactly how successful Arthas would have been if Sylvanas wasn't defeated, because, again, she would have been able to mount a counterattack. She would have been able to most likely stop a lot of the plans that Arthas would have had, because she had personal knowledge of how Arthas fought his battles. She had in some ways bested him before. Of course, not ultimately, he still won in the end. So there's so much that goes into this that I can't cover all of it in a single video without that video being 4 or 5 hours long. So I do apologize to everyone that's going, dude, there's so much lore that you're missing in this. Of course there is. There is a limited amount of time that I have in these videos. I can't cover everything in absolute detail, but it is an interesting thought. What if Sylvanas never died? What if Arthas never killed her? What are your thoughts? I would love to hear it in the comment section down below. Of course, if you like this video, if you like videos like this one, slap that like button. Just once again, turn it blue. You'll love the look of your page. And then, of course, to all of the patrons, the YouTube channel members, and the Twitch subs, thank you so much for your support. It means the world to me. Thanks to you guys, this channel is growing, and it's growing stronger every single day. And remember, patrons, every week there is a brand new podcast that goes live on Patreon, as well as behind the scenes videos. So if you want to take part in any of that, the link is in the description down below. And for those of you that want to watch me live, Twitch, link again, you know where to go. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, my name is Akalon, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.